Hi, in this section we'll be adapting cloud native patterns to our microservice travel application. So we will implement a circuit breaker pattern for a REST call to other microservice. We'll be using Eureka for service discovery. We'll be creating multiple services that are discovered via discovery client. And in this video, I'll be using Hystrix with Spring to implement circuit breaker. We'll be implementing component that will call an external service for details about travel. We will be guarding external call with Hystrix Circuit Breaker. We'll be supplying fallback in a case of a failure. And at the end, we'll be testing our code. So let's say that in our travel website, we want to implement a following functionality. When the user booked a travel for a specific city, it can get details about that city. So we will expose an endpoint travel, destination details, and city path variable. And it will return a JSON with details about city. And this is very simple call, but let's look at travel destination details service. So this is service that create an actual call to the external service. So we'll be using a REST countries API for getting information about cities. So let's say that you want to get information about Madrid. So we'll use that REST countries.European Union and it returns details about Madrid. But when we are creating microservice and we are calling some external microservices, there is always a danger of failure. So let's say that this external microservice, REST countries, is down or is responding with 500 response code or other bad thing happen. And in that case, when our user is executing that request, we don't want to return to that user that we are not able to serve that. So that 500 response code or something that bad happen. We want to hide it and return some placeholder for our user. That, for example, this is not available now, but we are still able to serve that request. So to achieve that, we will use a Hystrix. Hystrix is a library from Netflix that implements a circuit breaker pattern. Firstly, we need to define a dependency to Spring Cloud Starter Hystrix. It will add a dependency to Hystrix library. We will implement getInfoAboutCity method that takes a city name as a parameter and returns string that is a JSON with a city details. So we need to create a URI for the REST countries capital and city name. Next, it should use our REST template that is also injected here. As we remember, this is injected via constructor injection and we need to construct that REST template and supply bin. And we will look at this further. But then we are using that REST template to execute GET request for that specific object. So we are using URI and we are expecting string as a return type. And the very important thing is that if that GET for object returns any kind of exception, so service unavailable exception or other kind of exception, we want to supply some fallback method. So Hystrix takes a fallback method as an argument, and that method is called reliable. This is the name of the fallback method. It takes also a city name and returns also a string, because our getInfoAboutCity is the same method, and that fallback method should have the same signature. But when something bad happens, exception is thrown, we are returning that info about city. That city name is currently not available. So our user will know that this is not available now, okay, I will try later. To enable Hystrix in our application, we need into Spring Boot starter class define the enable Hystrix annotation here. It will enable that library and our code will be running properly, as we expected. Next we need to start our application and we will try to call that travel details endpoint. That will call, on the other hand, that European countries API. Let's say that you want to get the details about Madrid. So we are calling our microservice on the localhost port, and we are calling travel destination details Madrid, and it successfully returns information about the Madrid city. But let's say that we want to get an information about Barcelona, and some exception happen. Then our fallback method is executed, and we can see that it returns the string info about city Barcelona is currently not available. So we implemented a circuit breaker. Hystrix is very useful in case of the failure of the downstream system. So let's say that we have a lot of requests per second, and our users are repeating calling the travel details endpoint. Then, if our downstream system is down, our microservice could also went down because there is a lot of requests and every request gets an exception and our microservice will stop. And when we will use Hystrix, it will cut that traffic and return some placeholder fallback method, and our microservice will still be able to handle requests in some other ways, like for example booking travel and other endpoints not related to that one. That's why in microservices ecosystem, Hystrix is very important. Circuit breaker is very important pattern.